You know, it's an interesting thing that people wanted Dead Space to make a return. The majority of longtime fans asking EA to revive the series from comments on the retrospectives to an actual movement from a channel known as JKP Rising to get the survival horror series to make a return. But when it does, there are those who whine about a remake, projecting their own opinions as facts onto others with mixed results. Now, when it comes to me, I actually didn't think a remake or a return to the terror of a necromorph infestation was ever going to happen, especially with the rumors that were circulating at the time, like that we would get some juicy Dead Space action to be revealed to us at E3, but never did. And you can see an upload of mine where I talk days before the initial reveal at EA Play, where I discredit the rumor, but lo and behold, they did in fact bring us a remake reveal. Not just that, but gave us an inside peek into the development of the game's design. Say what you will, but I myself have been saying for years that I would love to see Dead Space return either as a remaster, or a reboot, or even a sequel to Dead Space 3. In this video, we'll be doing something a little bit different from the normal videos I produce on this channel, as I think these videos that I will be reviewing are pretty interesting. You may have seen this type of video in drama debates on YouTube or other related topics, as this will be a reaction commentary of their videos. There is a disclaimer that I would like to go over before we go underway into their videos, and that is as follows. I do not condone anyone from my audience going out of their way to harass and spread hate to these people, as that's not what I'm about. Yes, I will be providing points of criticism, but I don't want you to attack them over something that doesn't even warrant it. With that out of the way, let's get into the videos. First video on the list is from a YouTuber known as Full Fat Videos, who made their take on the remake reveal being titled "Nobody Wanted a Dead Space Remake." However, after some backlash from the Dead Space community, he has since retitled the video to "Somebody Wanted a Dead Space Remake, if we were being pedantic, but it's not a very catchy title, is it?" Which makes me want to laugh. The title kinda symbolizes how the individual is feeling at that point in time. Maybe the backlash got to him. Maybe it made him feel like his opinion didn't matter. However, if I believed that, I wouldn't be making this video, as it would be a waste of both my time and your time. Speaking of the title of the game, I would have preferred a title that states it's not the original experience, while also being faithful to the character Isaac Clarke, as it is his story, like Dead Space Re-Engineered. Or maybe something that hints towards the necromorphs, like Dead Space Reanimated, like seen with the Diablo 2 remaster, Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Dead Space is back? Dead Space is back? Dead Space is finally back? One of my favourite game series is coming back after an 8-year wait. We're finally getting more Isaac Clarke. Yes! Long have I waited. Yes! Dead Space 4 on next-gen consoles. It's a remake. Oh, fuck off, EA. EA killed the franchise with microtransaction bullshit in Dead Space 3, a sequel rushed to release without half the heart of the first two games, and then they screwed over Visceral Games, the team that made these titles any good in the first place, and then, instead of giving us a brand spanking new game, after all this time, they've decided, you'll pay to play the first game again, won't you? Won't you? We don't need to put in any of that, what's it called? Effort. No, let's just reskin the original game and call it a day. Daddy made you your favourite, open wide. It's a risk to create an entirely new game that offers fresh experiences and pushes the envelope of what the franchise can be, but it's a safe bet to remake the original game that you already know was well received. You've starved the fans for so many years that they will just be grateful for the first bit of Dead Space that comes their way. Well, it's better than nothing, I guess.
That's kind of ironic, isn't it? To say that there is going to be literally no effort put into the development of the game when you yourself don't even script your videos, you have no pre-thought, you just come out with your first opinion, diving headfirst into that behemoth of a topic. I mean, if that's how you wish to present this video and yourself, then more power to you, but at least with my videos, I give my mind some time to accommodate more thoughts and opinions towards the subject, and let said topic rattle around in my brain first before jumping into making a script for a video. But I guess that professional courtesy can't be afforded to some creators. See, if you had waited at least a month before making your video, you would have been treated to the inside development and interview with the developers to see that it is more than just your run-of-the-mill remaster. It is in fact a remake, which means yes, they will be remastering the graphics and the look and the design of the game, but they will be also adding in new aspects of gameplay and locations to make it a different experience than the original for new and veteran players of Dead Space.
You know why this remake is unnecessary? Because to create this video, I booted up my PS3 and game recorded Dead Space 1 and 2, and guess what? I still had a blast. These games still run smoothly, and they're still incredibly accessible to a modern audience. There's nothing about them that feels outdated or unplayable. There's no room to improve upon them. They came out a long time ago, and there's no need to alter them.
Oh yes, you're 100% right. Dead Space in itself is a perfect game. Except it's not. See, people who sit there and say, nope, there is no room for improvement for the original game, aren't fans of the game. They are in fact fanboys or fangirls or simps of the game. Now I say this because if you really were fans, you would be able to give good criticism to the developers and be able to pick apart the game itself. Not defend the original because you want a sequel to the third entry. And I get it, I want a sequel and a conclusion to the story just as bad as the die-hard fans out there. But I am also realistic to the first game. And yes, it is my favourite out of all of the Dead Space games. And that is why I want a remake more than a sequel at this period of time. How long should we have to wait to get a remaster or a remake of the first entry? See, at least I can say that Dead Space has a lot of problems, and I'll bet my life that you probably played the original once, maybe gave it 2 playthroughs in the making of this video, to come to the conclusion that you don't think Dead Space is worth remaking. But I have been constantly playing Dead Space for years to find a lot of glitches, bugs in the game that both take me out of the experience and scare me more than the game ever could. It's one thing to show the best the game has to offer, and an entirely different thing to show the best and ignore the worst. There are things that should be fixed, and we can see those through the problems, including the clunky feel of the controls for the PC port that require a download to be fixed. That was made by the community. And yes, while we are at it, remaster the graphics and add new interesting ideas to the mechanics.
It's not that I think this remake is going to play badly. To the contrary, I think it will probably be a slightly tweaked version of the original game with improved graphics. I just find it so calculated on the part of EA. So soulless and designed to milk money out of the original concept. Because if EA really cared about Dead Space, they wouldn't have shut down Visceral in the first place.
I'm sorry dude, but that's a piss poor argument. Oh, if you cared about Dead Space, you wouldn't have shut down the only studio that could make it. Any studio out there can make a Dead Space game. It's not the hardest thing to do, as long as they possess the capability to do so. I mean, if you go back to the events that led up to Visual Games being shut down, you can begin to understand why. I'm not saying the decision to shut down Visual was indeed a good thing, but at least I can understand why. See, if you had an employee that wasn't performing to your standards continuously, then what would you do? Keep them employed in case they lay a golden egg, or let them go? See, I am a Dead Space fan, but at least I am not a blind one. Seriously, that argument has not aged well and just shows that you don't care if you keep on using it. Please, get a different tune.
They would be greenlighting a fresh title in a universe that didn't need rebooting. I know you're thinking of putting in the comments section, you don't know what this game is going to be. It might not be a complete remake. You don't know whether or not there's going to be new enemies, levels and weapons that were never in the original game. It's going to offer you something new. You haven't even played it yet.
I hope you realise that is kind of what a remake is. It's truly fascinating that so many people don't know the difference between a remake and a remaster. See, a remaster is the original game, but with newer graphics. A remake, on the other hand, is all of that, and more things added in, like new locations, weapons, and gameplay aspects.
Look, if this game does have new content interspersed with the original structure, then I think that's arguably worse than just a carbon copy, because if you're going to fuck with the original work, you might as well just keep on creating new levels until you have a brand new game, no? Why settle for Dead Space 1.5 when you could have Dead Space 4? I'm no mathematician, but I'm pretty sure 4 comes after 3. Adding in new content to the remake remake would only further cement the idea that this is a cash grab in my eyes.
And here we come to why the video was made. The guy wants Dead Space 4, not a Dead Space remake. And I can understand that, I really do. But I feel that the team behind the remake wants to go back to the roots of the series. And then when they feel they have a more clear understanding of what the original was, then they can bring the series back to that good old survival horror experience, not the overall action survival series.
Think about what a genius marketing move it is, giving you exactly what you got before, but with the bare minimum amount of new shit in there to trick you into thinking you're getting a new experience. If EA really cared, you'd be getting something new from the ground up. Instead, it's far less of a risk to just Force Awakens the damn thing.
This is where I start to lose that respect I give to everyone while watching their content. The difference is, The Force Awakens was meant to be a new, original story, but instead we got a mashup of what made the originals great. With the Dead Space remake, it's kinda in the name. We know it's going to be the original story with some aspects, whether old or new, to expand on it, not a new story. The comparison that you just gave literally makes no sense.
At best, I could sympathise with a 4K collection of the original trilogy. You might have been too young when the original games came out, or simply missed them and don't have the means to get an older generation console. Next-gen collections in the PS3 era allowed me to go back and play all of the God of War series. It's still not very exciting for pre-established fans, but it's a way to gauge interest in a new title in a way that makes sense to me. This is not the same thing. This is not gauging interest for a new title. This is being treated with the fanfare and prestige of a new title. It's being remade to get all the glory of an original next-gen game without the sweat required to do so. And of course, this remake will make way more money for EA than just a simple collection. I guess it's a bit of a misnomer to say that nobody wants this Dead Space remake, however, because, depressingly, when I expressed my distaste with this announcement, several people leapt to defend the reputation of Electronic Arts.
Remember when I said that I was starting to lose respect for you? Well, it's gone now. You say several, but the example you gave me has 7 likes and replies, not several. Were you drunk while making this?
I hate to break it to you, but EA didn't stop and just say, Dead Space Remake or Dead Space 4. They chose a remake because of the continued interest in remakes over the last year, and the idea that you would have just gotten a sequel isn't really fair. If you want a sequel so badly, which is understandable, I'd recommend seeing if this remake is of high quality, and if so, supporting it to help show EA there is still interest in the franchise. Publishers aren't going to take that risk if there isn't proven interest in terms of sales, which there isn't yet. No, I shouldn't have to support EA repackaging a game that I supported over 13 years ago when it originally came out in the first place. They don't need my support, they make FIFA for fuck's sake. I supported Visceral Games, who they chewed up and spat out, the teams who actually put care and love into those old games. We've been shouting about wanting more Dead Space for years, EA is well aware of that fact, and they don't need to test the waters with a remake. If they had built Dead Space 4, we would have come. Like the baseball movie, not a porno. This does well, it could bring about the sequel we all want to cap off the original trilogy. This is in all honesty partially a test to see if Dead Space would do well in today's gaming community. I see it as Motive needing to prove that they can handle the IP. The success or failure of this remake will almost 100% determine whether a true sequel is discussed or made.
Ah yes, bringing visual games back into the argument because you have nothing else to give me. They really cared when making those Star Wars games, right? In all fairness, yes, EA did shut them down and the community was very rightfully upset. But if you're going to bring the same arguments back up from 6 years ago, then why should I take your points seriously? Also, the reason why we are getting a Dead Space remake in 2022 is partially due to the Callisto Protocol and negative atmosphere, so it's understandable that EA would want to have a franchise to be able to compete against those games. It's not about testing the community.
The fact that anything is being made at all is a damn miracle. Savour it. I don't understand why people are so ready to defend this shit. Nobody needs to prove anything. The proof is in the pudding. Dead Space 1 to 3. The fan base eager for more. We don't need to bank on the success or failure of a remake in order to get a sequel. Did we get remakes first to get sequels back in the days of the PS2?
Did the PlayStation 2 have remasters? Well, no, they had remakes. Everyone, I present to you Rayman Revolution. which is basically Rayman 2 for the PlayStation 1, but with an overworld and updated graphics to match the PlayStation 2.
Every Dead Space sequel needs to make the same jump that Dead Space 2 made. It's not necessarily a better game than the first, it depends on who you ask, but it expanded the original material enough to warrant a sequel. Dead Space 2 makes some noteworthy changes, like giving you Iron Man jet boots for the zero-G sections, which made them significantly more fun and less awkward to navigate. The level design was much tighter, no more backtracking, instead you pinged from place to place, exploring different parts of the sprawl. You get to see the outbreak unfold this time, and you even get to return to the Ishimura in one of the game's eeriest levels.
The Ishimura is in fact the most boring level in all of Dead Space 2, aside from the drill ride. You call yourself a Dead Space fan, but again you praise what you really should criticize. Now, it's okay if you enjoy the trip through the Ishimura, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity. I know everyone loves Dead Space 2 and praises visual for it, but it does have its fair share of issues. Say for instance, the Ishimura could have brought to light the PTSD Isaac would have been reeling from by returning to the place that introduced him to the infestation originally, giving us a psychological horror aspect which it fails at doing so. You go through the inner workings of the ship with its eerie, dark and silent hallways being illuminated by the spotlights set up by the contractors before the outbreak, while hearing past transmissions inside the room that once gave you a sense of safety in the original experience. However, the necromorphs, surprise surprise, find their way into the ship, and magically there is not one, but two brutes waiting for you, and according to the lore of the Ishimura, there would have been a couple of ways inside the ship, like the holes made by the asteroids that were present within the bridge, or the gaping hole left behind by the Valor's wreckage that would have shortly have been removed, or in the medical deck. But yeah, two brutes just materialize right in front of you, like how a viewer of mine once said that the necromorphs have mastered instant transmission. We could have seen Nicole just toying with you, making you feel that much smaller than you really are within the world of Dead Space. Hallucinations could have played, making the player believe things were happening when they really weren't. Instead, we get a couple of nods to past events, like the tentacle grab or Nicole's vidlog. They could have dived headfirst into the twisted world within Isaac's mind, being infested not by the necromorphs, but by Nicole herself, and the marker twisting her to its will. But no, it's a dark action survival game. And they couldn't have possibly have done what Halo did back in 2001 with 343 Guilty Spark, adding a horror level into an action shoot-'em-up game, by adding one level that shows just how messed up Isaac truly is, seeming as we got a glimpse of that in Chapter 4 with the needle. But I think that moment was too soon in the story and should have been in the Ishimura instead of a cheap jump scare.
Sure, the multiplayer of Dead Space 2 was beyond forgettable, but the main bulk of the game was a satisfying follow-up to the first game. Dead Space 3 did not make the same strides forward. A co-op mode instead of competitive multiplayer, sure, except it wasn't local co-op, and you couldn't access John Carver's tailored story if you were playing alone. Microtransactions all but destroyed the weapon system, the level design was for the most part stale, and it featured the weakest story yet. Plus, human enemies. That wasn't a great move.
Dead Space 2's level design when compared to 3's is arguably nearly the same, except for one adds in different locations when another is just inside of a space station. At least with the first, you were inside of the ship for 11 chapters, then you got a treat by going to the colony in the 12th chapter. Dead Space 2 just feels like I'm constantly traveling, not doing anything that aids in the mission to survive, until reaching chapter 7. Then the traveling continues, and yes, it was to give the game a less repetitive feeling, but to me, running from place to place, killing necromorphs is fun, but gets boring way too quickly. With Dead Space and Dead Space 3, you at least had objectives that didn't feel like pit stops in a race.
The best addition to the whole game was the melee option you could attach to weapons instead of a secondary fire. That shit needed to be in the next one. Tearing through necromorphs was very fun.
No, I don't want to see that in the remake, as yes, it is an okay weapon, but personally I don't see the appeal in getting up close and personal. As you can see from my hardcore streams, I'm more of a demolitions expert. Please, EA Motive, don't put Dead Space free weapons in the game unless it's a bonus for completing a hard difficulty like the Devil's Horns or the hand cannon.
EA got cold feet and quietly put the franchise on ice. This was a bad move in my opinion. The franchise wasn't dead, far from it, and a new title devoid of microtransactions and gimmicky multiplayer options would regain the goodwill which was lost. Instead, EA shut down Visceral Games.
For God's sakes, man, how many times are you going to bring Visual's demise up? Yes, Dead Space, no pun intended, was not dead. But look at it from EA's perspective. If the sales don't even make it close to the target, do you think they're really going to continue spending millions of dollars on developing games that aren't going to sell? So you may not think it was a good practice because you and many others still like Dead Space, but I think that we can all agree that Dead Space 3 flopped, and that's the reason for the company to stop making Dead Space games.
Even the snowy vistas of 3 presented something different than what we'd seen before, but to go back to the Ishimura in 2021 just seems dull. I know this chapter of Isaac's story, I know what went down. I know what this marker does. I know that Nicole is dead. Motive have reportedly said that the remake will add new elements to the story, gameplay and sound design of the original. There will apparently be no loading screens, meaning you'll be able to traverse the entire ship in one seamless fashion. I imagine Isaac will likely talk and be more essential to the story like in Dead Space 2. All those things sound good. But isn't it a waste of the talent at Motive? You could do all of these things, gameplay tweaks, new ideas, a seamless experience, sans loading times, in a new adventure set years after the last game with a weathered, galaxy-weary Isaac. What's next for my Isaac? I guess we'll never know.
Dude, seriously, if they made a sequel, you'd be crying because Isaac was not planned on being in the 4th game. Same with Carver, because either the two fell and died on Tau Volantis with the moon, and Awakening was just a fever dream of their dying breaths, or Awakening was real and they got killed by the Brethren moon staring them down. The 4th game was set to have Ellie as the main character, seeing the world from her perspective, travelling from ship to ship in an open world style of game. If you don't believe me, we got this in Dead Space 3's design, being more than just a linear game with optional missions that could be explored later on in the game with the use of the skip, or as I like to call them, loading screens on wheels.
Unlike the remake, which will retread familiar beats from a story we've seen before, the cancelled 4th game would have dug deep to give fans the answers they have been seeking since 2008. Wynett said, "I don't want to give away the lore, but I will say that we spent a bit of time working out the origin of the necromorphs and what purpose humans held in this dark universe. Would players find a way out of the necromorph apocalypse? I'd say yes, but they might be sorry they did. Sometimes you're better off with the devil, you know?"
Little note here, but this does annoy me. The quote reads, "Sometimes you are better off with the devil you know, not you are better off with the devil you know." I know what you're thinking, but it's just a little pet peeve of mine.
Wow, sounds like a bunch of game-changing revelations were set to unfold in the 4th installment. I can't wait to play it. Remakes don't breed innovation in the same way an original title would. The very first Dead Space was designed from the ground up to have no HUD whatsoever. The result was the rig, a way of displaying vitals to the player from Isaac's back. Visceral could have left it there, but they actually explain the concept of rigs within the world of Dead Space. It's not just for you, it's designed for Isaac's teammates. Well, when they're still alive. The idea that your co-workers literally watch your back. The lack of HUD blew me away as a kid. This is one of the first games I got on my PS3, and going through a world where all the pop-up windows and displays were baked into the game was exactly the kind of thing to make you feel like you were playing next gen. The mechanic still holds up incredibly well today, and I'm honestly shocked more games didn't rip it off. But there's no chance of innovation like that if we just go back to the same core ideas and reskin them instead. I'll honestly sign up to the Church of Unitology if the remake features anything as original and inspiring and innovative as the rig.
Are we getting confused again? It's not a reboot, it's a remake, so stuff added in that will change the aspect of the gameplay, like the rig system, will not be added in. Stuff like being able to fly in 0G will, but if you are going to moan because there isn't anything as innovative as the rig system, then look at every single Dead Space game. Did they do something like that? No. They just expanded on things that people either found repetitive or that they liked. For instance, feedback on 0G was like, hey, we don't really like this, so instead of trashing it, they actually went and made it better, giving you the ability to fly around these rooms instead of jumping from one spot to the other. But did they change the rig system or expand on it? Well, yes and no. They did expand on the lore a tiny bit, but they also did not add anything new to the concept within gameplay except for removing the map, which is fine, seeing as the Sprawl is an unfamiliar place to Isaac and he would not possess one, but in the Ishimura he did. Well, that was because his rig was linked into the Ishimura within the first game, at least I believe so he did. So that all makes sense as to why he would have a map there and not elsewhere. One question though for VAT's videos, what would you add to the original experience to make it more innovative for new players of the franchise? Oh, wait, you'd probably say nothing because there's nothing to improve on, right?
But let's take the consumer out of this. Let's forget about what I'm getting out of a Dead Space 4. Let's think about the original people that made it. They made art. Video games are just as much art as movies. Could you imagine improving the animation of Toy Story by remaking it? I mean, it's old as hell now, right? EA only waited 13 years. Come on, Pixar, where's the HD remake of Toy Story? The whole point of art is that it is imperfect. It is an expression of a person or group of people. You're not supposed to paper over the cracks.
Imagine comparing a studio remaking Dead Space to a studio remaking Toy Story for a discussion of replacing art. Are you real? Yes, video games, much like films and movies, are considered art, but however, if you are going to make that argument as to why we shouldn't have remasters or remakes or hell, even reboots, then I'm sorry, but that is just a terrible one to make. As it's not about replacing the old with the new, it's about delivering a fresh perspective onto newer players to add something constructive and meaningful to the art in question. It's about building on top of what came before. And that's it, people, for Full Fat's videos. Now you can kind of see why it got so much hate, because of not just the title, but for the piss poor arguments regurgitating the same points from when visual games bit the dust, not adding any new arguments or questions, and interjecting his own opinion with a closed mind attitude, or at least that's what did it for me. The message I get from this video is that of a baby crying for his bottle, and that might seem a bit harsh to you, but it's kind of true, adding no new forms of acceptable criticism to the company, as we all expected to see some people come out of the woodwork and start calling them out for things rather than just being happy with what you get. Could be worse, we could get nothing in return. Now we come to a video from Nikothelegend, and I hope for his case, he brings in a better perspective than the last guy did.
Well, here's something that no one ever asked for. Yes, no one asked for this at all. I sure as heck didn't. And if you did, then I got one word to ask you. I got one question. Why?
Okay, let's go through it. Ever since I started playing Dead Space, I loved the first game. Sure, there were times where I would get a little annoyed at some things. There were times where I threw my controller, but what games didn't make me feel like I wanted to burn a village down at the sheer frustration of a video game level? Regardless, I think Dead Space has probably the best setting and story of all the Dead Space games, but I have always wanted to see the terror inside the Ishimura in better graphics, to see the necromorphs in more realistic lights. And on top of that, to actually feel scared as they move in towards me after I accidentally hit reload instead of stasis and they rip me to pieces. To have new and interesting ideas being added to the game, and to have the Ishimura's interior being explored and expanded upon. To give me more rooms and doors to make me shudder at what could be on the other side, to find, oh, it's just another room. I like the original experiences, but I also enjoy seeing remasters or remakes being made to add something to the experience to keep it fresh. Although, instead of hearing me waffle on for another couple of minutes, you could just go and watch, a retrospective.
Visceral Games launched the original Dead Space in 2008 with Michael Condrey and Glenn Schofield directing. Schofield has been started striking distance, a new studio as part of PUBG Group. That studio is working on the Callisto Protocol, which seems to take inspiration from his work on Dead Space. Two sequels, Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, launched in 2011 and 2013, respectively, with the franchise remaining dormant since... No, not dormant, dead. dead. The studio was dead. Visceral Games was closed by EA in 2017 after the publisher scrapped its work on a new Star Wars title codenamed Ragtag. So instead of a brand new game, they want to go cash grab on a property that people used to like. Maybe because EA's like, oh, I forgot. Single player games are really good now. That's why we, oh man, Jedi Fallen Order, yeah, single player games. Oh man, so good that we took out the online components of Dragon Age 4 and Mass Effect 5, 4, whatever. Oh, so what do we do? Let's bring Dead Space back. Yeah, people like that after we murdered it.
Seriously, are these two just trapped within a hive mind or something? I swear to God, give me a different argument. Yes, I get it, EA killed Visual. They also killed Command and Conquer for me. I get it, but come up with something new to add to the conversation. I would just laugh if EA was to see this video and say, wow, you're still waiting?
You see, this is just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate accident, and I just can't believe this, guys. Like, this is very upsetting to me, because this is something that should not be happening. This is bad business practice, and this is going to be one giant cash grab.
Okay, let's be fair. EA wants to capitalize off of Dead Space. Yes, they do. Is that such a bad thing? It has been quite a long time since Dead Space 3, about 8 years to be exact, so why wouldn't they make a remake of the first title? And no, it doesn't have to be dipping their toes in the water to see if anyone wants it or not, but to put out the message that EA is thinking about making Dead Space 4, that they have it in the back of their mind to make it. But first they want to remake the originals. Is that really such a bad thing?
One giant cash grab. Look, I don't care if it looks amazing. I don't even care if it plays, let's just say, better, okay? Because the controls are more modernized or there's some gameplay. You don't mess with the original. You don't mess with the classics, you know? You just don't, especially when you're not even the same company.
So you don't make remakes or remasters of games that have been released like, say, 10 years ago, right? So the anniversary versions of Halo don't exist, right? You have to be so out of touch within a community to even believe that. I mean, Bungie left Halo to work on Destiny, and do you know what came out in their absence? Halo 2 Anniversary with stunning cinematics and high-definition graphics that stay faithful to the original design and foreshadowing of the original. But no, you don't mess with the originals, right? It just shows how butthurt these creators are when it comes to a remake and not a direct sequel. Could it be impossible for a second to think that perhaps Dead Space is going through the same changes that Halo is going through? Sure, we're getting a remake like they got the remasters, but we might get direct sequels later on. You just don't know that yet. With Halo, the first anniversary came out, then Halo 4 jumped into view. Then Halo 2 Anniversary came out, then with Halo 5. Etc., etc., etc.
And they're not the same company. They have no right to mess with that original vision. You just don't do that. You just don't do that. I mean, is that fair to say? I think that's fair to say. I'm not trying to like complain here or anything, but if you want to do it right, make a sequel.
Really, because that's what you've been doing this entire video, telling us why it's such a bad thing to have a remaster or a remake when other franchises have been able to grow while being remade to suit new audiences.
The story isn't done for Dead Space, for crying out loud. Why are we going back to the beginning? And it's like, it's 2021. I bet you anything there's going to be some really political, I don't know, social commentary in the game or some crappy political, you know, like some political thing going on in Dead Space. Like, you know, they're gonna just especially when it's a Star Wars, like a studio that made Star Wars Squadrons. It's like I know I made the Fable example of a racing game company working on a role-playing game, which to me is still risky business. That's kind of the same way as shooter space simulator game working on a horror franchise. But well, they worked on a space game. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Dead Space, let it be dead. It died when the studio was shut down. The only way to revive it is to make a sequel to finish the story. Finish the fight against the Necromorphs and the Markers as Isaac Clarke.
It was never going to be the case that Isaac finishes the fight because he wasn't planned to be in Dead Space 4. And the fact that you would rather not have a Dead Space revival because it's adding something to the original experiences speaks wonders for this video. Personally, I would condemn EA for destroying Visual, but from a business standpoint, I would understand. Sure enough, my series on Versus may have some people enjoying the aspect of seeing a single player game be transformed into a race, with two creators engaging within a commentary while trying to outdo the other. But when compared to the lore series or the timeline videos, making them just doesn't seem to be worth doing when compared to the other types of content I produce on this channel. I have my issues with EA and all of the Dead Space games. For example, putting microtransactions into Dead Space 3 was obviously not a step in the right direction, along with the love triangle giving you the wrong type of drama inside of the action game, or the constant from point A to point B to point C to point Z traveling in Dead Space 2, making the progression feel repetitive and unearned when you actually accomplish your goals, as all that stood in your way as an obstacle to be solved was necromorphs, and Isaac always being trapped behind a wall or a broken down barrier as there were people being slaughtered by these recombinated nightmares often made me feel isolated from others and not really a part of the same experience those people were reeling from. Like I'm going through a survival action experience and they're going through a psychological horror experience. Or Dead Space bugs and glitches that kinda add to the horror, but for an unintended reason, or things that could have been explained in the game, like say for instance Isaac has a journal within the game giving you his commentary for objectives and such, where he could have talked about watching the vidlog of Nicole, but there is no mention of it. I can respect other opinions, but only if they can muster up some actual good points rather than the rehashed EA killed Visual arguments that get puked up with every single outraged creator on this platform, as they seem to not understand why Dead Space is being remade, and the only real reason I can think of is it's not Dead Space 4. Not because Dead Space is being remade for next gen is a bad thing, it's because what some people expected, even though I personally believe it's a step in the right direction, as I say to EA Motive, show us the passion for creating video games. Show us what you can do, and don't let negative ideals cloud your judgment, as let's be fair, if they do, we will never see a conclusion to the necromorph threat plaguing the galaxy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed or agreed with my points, then hit the like button. Comment your praise or criticism down below, and I look forward to hearing from you. And if you're new here, then why not sign up to join the British Alliance today by subscribing and ringing in the notification bell for updates on future posts, streams, and new content. And I will see all of you awesome people on the front lines, and have a good one.